baseball. And it's starting even earlier than it normally does, but I'll tell you, if you live someplace like we live here in the Northeast, or you're somewhere in the Midwest and you have had just an absolutely brutal winter, and you live with ice and snow and sleet and freezing rain, when baseball comes back, it's like all of a sudden a palm tree popped up in your backyard. So knowing that we're going to have baseball, legitimate regular season, real baseball to talk about starting tomorrow. It is finally opening day, and Carl Ravitch is going to be right here in New York calling the Yankees-Orioles opener. He will join us at the top of the next hour. So we're going to do a baseball a little bit later on. We're going to start off with football, maybe sprinkle in a little NBA with some Harden Giannis stuff from last night, but there was a lot to talk about at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Again, Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. on a Wednesday afternoon. All right, I am the Cincinnati Bengals. The vote yesterday was 31-1 in favor of taking offensive and defensive pass interference and letting it go to review in the last 2 minutes from the booth. Coaches' challenges before that. 31 teams voted in favor of instant replay to be used on pass interference based on one horrible, awful, historically bad, maybe the worst non-call in the history of the sport that took place in the NFC Championship game in New Orleans last year. And I get it. I get that you want to make sure that you have the at your disposal at all times in case of emergency break glass solution so you never have that happen again. But to me, and I was hoping all through the offseason, the more you heard that this may be the way that they would go in the NFL, that cooler heads would prevail. And that they would say, you know what? We saw with the best officials we've got in our sport, on the biggest stage in our sport, a championship game in one of our conferences, we saw two guys just freeze and not have the stones to make a call and throw a flag. And it was unbelievable that that happened, but that it really was a one in a million moment. In your life as a football fan, do you ever remember a non-call as bad or worse than that one, with as much riding on it as you did there? I don't, which is part of the reason why I thought cooler heads might prevail. And I thought they may say, let's not change this rule. Let's not open the Pandora's box of starting to take judgment calls and go to replay. And let's look at this kind of in a vacuum, that this call in the next 50 years of us watching football will probably not happen again on that stage. Having said that, though, I apparently am the Cincinnati Bengals because they are the only team that voted against going to replay for pass interference, offensive and defensive. And the reason that I am against it, and the reason that, and look, I work for a team. I work for the New York Jets. I'm their radio announcer. They voted for it. So their own employees coming out and saying, I disagree with them, I would have voted against it, is because not that I don't want to correct that call. Who wouldn't want to correct that call? Of course you want to correct that call. Of course you want to be able to find a way to make sure that a call that would have ended a championship game and altered which team played in the Super Bowl basically rode on that moment. Naturally, I would want to get that right. But to me, this goes towards the Pandora's box that now gets opened that I'm not sure they are fully thinking through. And the reason that I am against it is because as much as I want to get that call right, I just simply don't trust the people in charge of instant replay in the NFL to not take this and now go where replay has gone with all other types of calls in football, I think in baseball, at times in basketball. The problem, I think, with instant replay in all sports is that it has gone to a place it was never intended to go in the first place. Instant replay was supposed to correct the Don Denkinger blown call at first base in the World Series. That pass interference call in the NFC Championship game, right? Mike Renfroe in the back of the end zone against the Steelers in a playoff game for the Oilers. The season-altering, potential championship-altering, 99 times out of 100, there's no way a human being with sight would get the call wrong, blown call. The call that's so obvious, so egregious, so brutally awful that you're going to take replay, you're going to correct that, make sure we get it right and move on. And yet what has happened with the technology and with the people in charge of that technology, it's become Frankenstein. To the point that they had to change what is a catch and not a catch based on the fact that replay was taking plays that had been catches for 100 years in football and telling us all they weren't catches. So they had to redefine the catch rule because of the unintended consequences of replay going way too far in the other direction. Because now we have gotten to the point with instant replay where we freeze frame plays, frame by frame by frame. Working for the Jets a couple of years ago, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, and any Jet fan, any football fan maybe, would remember this play against the Patriots, remember the highlight. Austin Seferian-Jenkins catches a ball, a little hook out in the left flat, turns upfield, gets hit, dives for the pylon, in through the corner of the end zone, lands out of bounds, but breaks the plane and goes through the end zone. Clearly a touchdown. For 100 years, it is a non-debatable touchdown. All the officials throw their hands up. But wait a minute. It's a scoring play, so it automatically has to go to replay. Well, what do they see in replay? He gets hit in midair, and for a nanosecond, for a freeze frame or two of a slowed down, super slow-mo, back it up, move it forward, back it up, move it forward, look at replay, you can see the ball just kind of jostle free in his arms. But then played at full speed. You can't with the naked eye even see that. And then he lands out of bounds with complete control of the ball. It's obviously a touchdown. What happens? Fumble. He fumbles it through the side of the end zone, Patriot ball out to the 20-yard line, complete game changer. And a call that in a million years was never, ever, ever intended to be used replay-wise to be changed. So I use that just as one of many, many examples. All right, now let's look at pass interference. How often are you going to have a pass interference call? That's nothing like what we saw in the NFC Championship game. Not only think about coaches' challenges for the first 56 minutes of the game, the first 28 minutes of each half, but how about the last 2 minutes of each half? Think about what we could now have with instant replay, with the booth initiating calls on not only flags thrown for pass interference, but non-calls. So it's a tie game, a 3-point game, 25, 30, 35 seconds to go. Someone throws the ball over the middle. Wide receiver goes up, bang, bang, play. Literally as the ball arrives, defensive back comes in, knocks the ball away. What do you think the team that is looking for the call, and maybe if it was outside of the last 2 minutes, just for the heck of it, might throw a challenge flag if they had them left, their sideline, and especially if they're the home team, the entire stadium is going to be screaming for every play like that to be reviewed. For the booth to buzz down, let's take another look at it. Think about the number of plays that we could have in the last 2 minutes of a first half, and oh my God, with the game on the line, the last 2 minutes of the game, where all of a sudden, before you run the next play, the replay booth is going to have to buzz down to see if maybe someone grazed a wide receiver just a shade too early. And now it may be, in this era of looking for things to overturn, rather than only using replay to overturn the most egregious things, looking for things to overturn, that you may get constant stoppages in the last 2 minutes of each half because of potential game-changing plays. There's no penalty in all of football that more greatly alters the outcome or can than pass interference. It's the only penalty in football that can be over 15 yards, right? What other penalty in football can be a 30, 40, 50-yard penalty? Hail Marys might have to go to the replay booth just to see if maybe a defensive back on a jump ball grazed a guy a little early, altered his ability to get to the ball. Now all of a sudden you get the ball at the 1 yard line. Because if you slow it down on super slow-mo instant replay and you see even a hint of a non-flag thrown pass interference, and now you've got the ability to change that call, you really don't have an excuse not to. I think it's terrible. And I would have been right there with the Bengals voting against it. When you start to go to replay on calls that are judgment calls, you start to bring much more of a human out. This is no longer, did he break the plane or not? Did he step out of bounds or not? Did he catch it or not? The black and white line calls that have to do with, you're supposed to be able to see, like, without a doubt evidence that you got the call right or wrong. This is now a judgment call. How many times are you watching a game where you see a play that you would call pass interference that the guy on the field didn't? Or how many times would you see a play that you wouldn't have called pass interference, but the guy on the field threw the flag? Then you go to replay. It's pretty 50-50. You don't think that human element comes into play in the replay center in New York? I cover college football for ESPN. About 3 or 4 years ago, myself and a handful of broadcasters went to the instant replay convention for all college replay guys in Chicago. And they booked this hotel for a couple days, big ballroom, couple hundred guys that are the replay booth officials at all college football games. And what they do is they give everybody a clicker, like a yes or a no little handheld remote. And up on a screen, they'll put up different plays. And they will say, this was the call that was made in the game. Should the call stand, or would you reverse it on replay? And you either hit yes or no for yes, let the call stand, or no, they got it wrong. Replay should review it. And I'm telling you, if they put up 40 examples, maybe a handful of them were pretty much unanimous. There were a lot of calls that they put up on the screen that the guys that are actually in the replay booths at college football games would vote, and it would be like 60-40 or 70-30, meaning depending on the guy that you had in the replay booth, he was going to make the call that could potentially change the outcome of the game. And if it had been a different guy in a different replay booth, the outcome of the game would have been different because two different people would have voted in opposite directions. So there is a human element to this where now you go to pass interference as a reviewable call, and you are opening a Pandora's box that I wish they never would have opened. And I'm not sure now where it stops. Why do you draw the line at pass interference? Just because it's a game-changing call? Why not include roughing the quarterback? Maybe the guy touched him, maybe he didn't. Maybe your version of roughing the quarterback and how hard a quarterback got hit and how much a guy drove him into the ground, maybe your definition differs from mine. This is the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. So if you want to give me a call and tell me why I'm wrong, feel free at 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. But I can see this becoming end-of-game drama, end-of-game controversy, law of unintended consequences, where they never, ever thought that replay, with a lot of other calls, would go. To me, with pass interference, it could go times 10. You're going to slow these replays down frame by frame by frame, and you may get a guy who's playing really well in the secondary. He's going to see a ball thrown over the middle. He's going to go up and try and time it, and he's going to hit a wide receiver, a nanosecond early. And I guess by the book definition, that's pass interference. You hit him a little early, it's pass interference. Might be to you, may not be to me, or maybe it is to me and not to you. Judgment call. Going to replay? Very, very dangerous precedent. Very dangerous precedent. And again, they were 31-1 in favor of it. I would have been a voice of dissension. If I was a team owner or a team general manager, it would have been 30-2 because I would have been standing right there next to the Bengals saying, I don't like it. The one other thing, a couple of other football topics that drew my attention. I was at Indiana last night calling an NIT game, so kind of in and out of the practices all day. Didn't hear a lot of talk shows, but over the last couple of days, the news comes out that Rob Gronkowski retires. And I was amazed, just scanning Twitter, at the back and forth at times on Twitter of people saying that Rob Gronkowski might not be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Now, ultimately, Rob Gronkowski is a no doubt about it Hall of Famer. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. But when you talk about a first ballot guy, you are talking about, putting a guy on a different level. To me, that now has become the line in the sand where you're like a special Hall of Famer or not if you get in on the first, maybe the second ballot. It means you're a no-brainer Hall of Famer. You're a guy that automatically goes in. Because the Hall of Fame, or Halls of Fame in different sports, has been watered down a bit. And let's be honest, we have put guys into Halls of Fame in different sports that were good players, but not great. Were great players, but not immortal. In what universe is Gronk not a first ballot Hall of Famer? Rob Gronkowski, I think, is the most dominant player to ever play his position. If you are the most dominant player to ever play your position, you are by definition a first ballot Hall of Famer. No one changed how defenses had to guard that position the way that guy did, especially in the red zone. But even look at his yards per catch. He was unstoppable. If you are by definition unstoppable, you are by definition a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, to only play 9 years, be number 1, number 3, yards per game, receiving touchdowns for your position. And I'm telling you right now, living with the Jets and living in that division for the last decade, there have been players that the Bills and the Dolphins and the Jets have gone out and drafted purely based on the presence of that guy. Gronk altered how teams drafted. Gronk altered how teams deployed their entire group of troops defensively. You played different defenses against the Patriots when he was on the field than you played against any other opponent during the season. I mean, look, there are other great tight ends. There are the Gateses and Gonzaleses of the world, and those guys are great, great players. And they're also automatic Hall of Famers. But none of them were as dominant as this guy was. I was stunned at the number of people that even thought it was a debate as to whether or not Rob Gronkowski was a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, you're a dominant player at that level? You're not a first ballot Hall of Famer? You better believe you are. And that is the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. All right, we'll get to some phone calls here. We'll squeeze in as many as we can during the first hour because Carl Ravitch is going to have the call of Yankees-Orioles tomorrow on opening day. We're going to talk baseball with him at the top of the next hour. So let's get right to it and talk to Pete, who joins us first here on ESPN Radio. Bob Wischusen in for Stephen A. What's up, Pete?
Hey, Bob. How you doing? Thanks for taking my call. I respect your opinion. As a Saints fan, you know, as egregious as the Cincinnati Bengals have been with Pac-Man and Vontae Burfict, of course they're going to vote no. They've marauded people, and then I'm here in L.A. on the Rams side. You got 3 goons in the back with Talib, Peters, and this. I don't even know how to pronounce this guy's name. You know, I mean, we're playing the game of football, technique, spirited sportsmanship, period, hands down. As a Saints fan, yeah, we made a mistake. Maybe we should have ran it instead of passing it. Great. But you got 4 to 5 people from Southern Cal calling the game, biased.
Well, I mean, now you want to get to conspiracy theories? I actually kind of lost whatever you were talking about there. I think you were agreeing with me. I'm not 100% sure. And if you're that deep into the phone call and I still don't know what you're talking about, we move on to the next guy. We go to Brian, who joins us next here on ESPN Radio. What's up, Brian?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for taking my call.
You got it.
For the most part, I totally agree with you. It's a dumb rule change. It's going to slow the game down for one, and it's gonna affect too much.
Here's my problem with it. The goal of replay is to eliminate controversy, not create more of it. To me, when you're reviewing judgment calls, you are potentially going to create more controversy, not lessen. I think we will have more debates on Mondays about whether or not a replay review of a pass interference call got it right than we have as to whether or not the officials have gotten the call right in the first place right now. I think this is going to create more controversy, not create less. And to me, that's a problem. When you open the Pandora's box of reviewing judgment calls, your eyes may see and interpret something different than my eyes will. And in the last 2 minutes, when challenges are out the window, and now all replays have to come from the booth, and the booth is going to have to initiate whether or not only on a flag thrown, but on a non-call. That means every single time in the last 2 minutes of a close game, when a defensive back is anywhere near a wide receiver, somebody's going to want to review. Either a flag's going to be thrown, and the team that had the flag thrown against them is going to want the booth to take another look at it. A flag won't be thrown, and the team that feels like they were victimized and they should have gotten a pass interference call, they're going to want the booth to review it. You're going to have on almost every passing play in the last 2 minutes of a close game, one sideline or the other sideline exploding, not happy, and wanting the booth to take another look at a play. Think about watching football right now. How often do you see a wide receiver at the end of a play where he doesn't make the catch, throw his arms up in the air looking for a flag from somewhere? I mean, it happens like on almost every passing play in the NFL. It's like a wide receiver's version of being a golfer, shanking one and then looking at his club. Oh, it turned in my hand, right? Even when you don't make a good play on the ball, even when it's your fault, you dropped it. You're automatically turning around, throwing your hands up, and looking for a flag. Now, in the last 2 minutes of close games especially, all of those plays could go to the replay booth. You're the replay booth. Or you are New York and you want to initiate a replay of a call that was or was not just made. You see a guy on the monitor from way up in the sky or at the broadcast center throw his arms up. You're going to sit there and go, we got to look at it. We have no choice. It's a 3-point game, minute and a half to go. It's going to be a 30-yard penalty if it either does or does not get called. I don't like it. And all based on a call that was so egregious, so awful, so mind-numbingly inept that those two guys who were both looking at it in the NFC Championship game, neither threw the flag, that I don't think on that stage, in that spot, we will ever see a blown call that bad again. But now we're going to take the ends of all of these games and potentially throw them into pass interference replay chaos based on something I really don't think in our lifetimes we're ever going to see again. That's how bad that missed call was. 888-SAY-ESPN. 888-729-3776. Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio. And coming up when we get back as well, I'm going to bring up the team that I think is the most interesting team in the draft and the team that I think may alter the draft for everybody else in the top, say, dozen or so picks. And we will definitely get back to your telephone calls. If you're on hold, stay right there because, I see a lot of people lined up and want to talk about instant replay now, having governance over pass interference, yay or nay. If you haven't tried the delicious high-quality meat from Butcher Box, you're going to be blown away. Butcher Box brings you the meat, and it's meant to be the way you want it. You get all the benefits you're supposed to get. Unbelievable flavor, unparalleled nutrition. They work closely with the best farms and companies committed to raising animals humanely, from grass-fed beef to free-range organic chicken to wild-caught sockeye salmon from Bristol Bay, Alaska. Butcher Box has over 20 different cuts of meat to choose from with customizable boxes and a variety of other options to choose.
He is averaging 40 a game. That's what he's doing. The brother is special. He's something to behold. He's averaging 40. He scored over 50 on about 3 or 4 occasions this year. He scored over 40, obviously, numerous times. He has scored over 30 on all other 29 teams in the NBA. That is what James Harden has done. Chris Paul's been hurt. No matter. Clint Capella has been hurt. No matter. Eric Gordon has been hurt. No matter. James Harden has been that kind of brother. He has been nothing short of spectacular. Holding it down. This is what he does. This is what he brings to the table. The Greek Freak, Stephen A., why are you not giving him that same level of credit? Why are you not doing that? I'll tell you why he's not doing that. I'm telling you why I'm not doing that. Because the Greek Freak has Mike Budenholzer. The Greek Freak has an exceptional coach who I think is going to be coach of the year. And led by his schemes, obviously assisted by the greatness of the Greek Freak because he is great. Milwaukee's number 1 defense in the NBA. You got a top-notch defense. You got personnel to assist along with exceptional coaching, that does it. When I look at Mike D'Antoni, nothing but respect, but let's call it what it is. Mike D'Antoni, you could call him innovative offensively. You could call it all of those things. But here's the reality of the situation. When he was in New York, he gave the ball. When he was in Phoenix, he gave the ball to Steve Nash. When he was in New York, he gave the ball to Jeremy Lin. When Carmelo arrived, he wasn't down with that.
Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed.
Stephen A. Smith Show is brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics. Take synthetic motor oil to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. And plus ESPN Radio presented by Progressive Insurance. Protecting your small business is a big deal. Cover what you've worked for and worked so hard for. Visit progressivecommercial.com. Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Back to the phones in just a sec. A lot of calls on hold that want to talk about instant replay now being involved in offensive and offensive and defensive pass interference, whether the flag is thrown or not. I'm against it. I'm in the minority. Certainly based on the NFL vote, I'm in the minority, and I think they are setting themselves up for monstrous controversy in the last 2 minutes of close games when every little bit of contact, they're going to want one sideline or the other is going to want to get the replay booth involved. But one other thing that I think needs to be brought up football-wise is on the eve of the draft, and now we're less than a month away from the draft, trade talk is going to really heat up. And right here in New York City, I think the team that could start the domino effect should they choose, because they need a quarterback and they've got the ammunition to go up and get one or to prevent other teams from getting their guy, is the Giants. And you hear a lot of talk about now the Giants might not even take a quarterback at 6 if they stay put. They may wait until 17 to take a Daniel Jones. I don't think Drew Lock's going to fall that far, but maybe they'll like one of those secondary guys at 17 and use the 6th pick for a defensive player and get 2 guys. I think that's a mistake. I'm a big Haskins fan. I think he is absolutely a worthy top 5 pick. I think the Jets should be a target for the Giants to potentially come up and make a trade. But what the Giants are trying to do right now is convince everybody that they've got a plan. And that their plan is at some point to put a quarterback behind Eli Manning, but to move forward that way. And to me, if you have a plan, you decisively go get your quarterback. And if Haskins is your quarterback, you do whatever you've got to do to go get him and build a new 10 to 15-year run around that guy. I think any other position, if you've got quarterback settled, any other position, you may like guys ahead of you at 6, but you can stay put at 6. You could take the best available player, stay put at 17, take the next best available player, and move forward as long as you've got your quarterback. With any other position, that's fine. With quarterback, you need to be decisive and you need to go get your guy. Because I've been working around the Jets since 1996, and I've been their play-by-play guy since 2002. So I have lived through a lot of eras of Jet football here in New York where the Jets were the rudderless ship, where they were always looking to kind of middle it. I don't want to pay the price to go from 6 to 3, so instead I'm going to take a quarterback further back in the draft, like a Geno Smith in the 2nd round, and I'm going to try to middle it and get a steal later in the draft and see if I can kind of find a diamond in the rough. Very rarely does that work, at least on purpose. Oftentimes when that happens, it happens by accident. Russell Wilson happens by accident. The Seahawks were convinced, but not convinced enough to draft him in the 1st or 2nd round. Draft him in the 3rd round. You think they would have taken with one of their first 2 picks if they knew what they know now? To me, when you think you've got a quarterback and you're sold on one, and I can't tell you whether the Giants are sold on Haskins or not. The proof will be in what they do. But what I can tell you is a guy that's got this type, I think, of, a set of measurables and played the way he played, and the more you hear about him, the more you hear that he's got that brain that processes information, that is going to be able to run an NFL offense and be able to deal with all of the different arrows that are flying his way. You get a guy like that, you better believe if you're sitting at 6, somebody's going to jump up ahead of you, make a deal with one of those teams ahead of you and go get him because they're going to be decisive and they're going to go after him. I think the Giants, because they've got the 17th pick as well, they've got the ammunition to move up. I think they hold the key to how this whole draft could end up shaking out. It'll be very interesting to see what they do. But when a quarterback is concerned, my philosophy, you do what the Jets finally did last year. They finally, outside of the one shot at it they took with Mark Sanchez, and it didn't work, they finally, for the first time since Sanchez, came to a consensus about the quarterback, took whatever ammunition it was going to take to move up into the top 3 to make sure that they got a guy, and they decisively went and took the CEO and put him at the head of their organization, which is what Sam Darnold is now going to be for the next decade plus. They were decisive, they moved up, they got their guy. You try and middle it at quarterback, you try and wait and hope guys fall to you, you wait in the middle of the first round and take one of those secondary guys that the rest of the league don't have a consensus on, you are rolling the dice. And you can very easily appear to be the rudderless ship as opposed to the team that's got a plan. Let's go to Nathan, who joins us next here on ESPN Radio. Bob Shoes and sitting in for Stephen A. What's up, Nathan?
Oh, not too much. Out of this whole light of the situation, what I'm realizing more and more with the NFL is they're too reactive with all their situations that they handle stuff with instead of being proactive. When this came out that this egregious call was made, the NFL needed to come right out and nip this in the butt and say, this was a bad call. This was a mistake that was made, but we're not going to look at restructuring how rules and how things are done. And I agree with you 1,000%. They're opening Pandora's box by being able to review judgment calls. That's taking the officiating out of the game when you take their judgment call away.
Well, just by definition, your judgment might be different than my judgment. They may get a call in the last 2 minutes of a championship game or a Super Bowl where replay initiates now a pass interference call that's iffy from the booth. They go with what replay says. They change a call on the field and end up with just as big a controversy in that direction as the blown call last year in the NFC Championship game. Mike joins us next here on ESPN Radio. What's up, Mike?
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
You got it.
A couple things. I think if this rule was relegated to the challenge flag system throughout the entire game, it could be better because coaches are going to hold on to those flags a little bit longer in case a call like that throws up. But secondly,
I agree with you, but and I'll let you make your point, but just put yourself in the position of a head coach now. You're down by 4. You got 2 timeouts. There's a minute 30 on the clock. You're the play caller. You're an Andy Reid or a Sean Payton or someone like that. You have all those different things going on in your brain. What they're trying to do by taking the last 2 minutes, the crucible moments of the game, and putting that in the replay booth, all replays they're trying to take that off the coach's plate because the coach has so much going on in his orbit in the last 2 minutes of a close game that he shouldn't also have to worry about correcting blown calls. That there should be a backup system to make sure that that's not on his plate any longer. That's what they're trying to do, I think, in the last 2 minutes of these games. So go ahead, make your point.
Well, the funny thing is, I would kind of go the other direction and put more on the teams and say, okay, let's raise the stakes in the last 2 minutes. You can throw the flag, but if you get it wrong, it's a loss of a timeout and a loss of a down. That way, it puts it back on the teams and less on the officials and the controversy and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, if you want to gamble here, go for it if it's worth it. But the stakes are higher.
Yeah, I think you're going someplace that's unnecessary. I don't think they should have to do that. I mean, I think that this is, again, that's the byproduct of opening Pandora's box. That's where all of a sudden this whole thing starts going down a slippery slope where now you might bring in other judgment calls that replay might want to get involved in as the years go on. I mean, why do we think that the only game-changing calls we're going to have are going to be involving pass interference? What happens if next year, in the NFC or AFC championship game, minute to go, somebody very clearly roughs the quarterback? Or somebody doesn't rough the quarterback and a flag gets thrown. Somebody gets a 15-yard penalty, moves them into field goal range, and they kick a game-winning field goal that they would not have been in field goal range without having gotten the benefit of that flag. Now, all of a sudden, that judgment call may end up in the replay booth. All for a call that I don't think we're ever going to see again. That's the thing that drives me crazy about this. I don't think you're ever in your lifetime going to see a blown call the likes of which you saw last year in the NFC Championship game. I don't see it happening. I think 99.8% of officials would have pulled a flag out in that spot and thrown the damn flag. And then we wouldn't be in this spot. But now you're talking about all of these, if he calls one way or the other, potentially in the last 2 minutes especially, when the game's on the line, the booth buzzing down because two guys last year were looking right at a play in front of them and just didn't have the onions to throw the flag. If they would have thrown the flag last year, this would not be the spot that we're in. I'm telling you, there will be games played in the NFL this year where all the conversation on Monday, all of it, is going to be about, can you believe replay initiated or flipped a pass interference call in that game, change the end of the game? It's going to happen. You start going to replay on judgment calls, it is going to happen. If you missed any of the show, go and check it out on demand. The Stephen A. Smith podcast brought to you by Capital One Saver Card. Earn 4% cash back on dining and entertainment, 2% at grocery stores, 1% on all other purchases. What's in your wallet? And as the new season gets underway, the TuneIn app has every baseball fan covered from opening day to the World Series. Listen to your favorite team with live calls for every MLB game with TuneIn Premium. Your all-in-one audio app, TuneIn brings together not only MLB coverage, but other live sports, music, news, podcasts, including all of your favorite ESPN radio podcasts like The Stephen A. Smith Show. Download the TuneIn app and begin your free 30-day trial of TuneIn Premium today. Bob Wischusen sitting in for Stephen A. 888-SAY-ESPN, 888-729-3776. Not only on ESPN Radio, but on the app, on the Listen tab of the ESPN app, Channel 80, Sirius XM, and ESPN News. You can always tune in on television as well. I'm also at ESPN Bob on Twitter. So if you want to tweet me or follow me, feel free. I would love it. I throw gems out there once in a while. If you're not one of
I even came to his defense last week when people were getting beside themselves talking all of this nonsense about him. He didn't want to win and all that. Stop. He doesn't deserve that. But I'll tell you what I went off about today. So I don't know whether it was some photo or whatever, but some woman that had worked towards helping LeBron James with his rehabilitation tweeted out before deleting the tweet about working out with him and essentially saying he should have been out for 6 months. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm just paraphrasing. They're essentially saying he should have been out 6 months. Should have been out 6 months. That's what they're trying to say. Here's my point, ladies and gentlemen. Why now? LeBron James got hurt Christmas Day against Golden State. He missed the next 18 games. LeBron James has been back since before the All-Star break. LeBron James has been back for damn near 2 months. Why are we just learning about this now? Now, I want to make sure that everybody is clear with what I'm saying. I want to make sure everybody's clear, so we all understand each other. I don't know what happened. I'm not saying that LeBron or his camp or whatever lying, about anything. I don't know. I'm just giving my humble opinion. Ain't no inside information here. I'm just telling you what I feel. I find it a tad bit odd that now that the Lakers season is officially over, essentially eliminated for the playoffs, that means, and LeBron ain't going to the playoffs,
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on The Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed.
Bob Wischusen in for Stephen A. Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming to you live from the Seaport District at Pier 17, brought to you by Chase. Plus, if you need seats to a game, download the Vivid Seats app and enter promo code CHAMPS at checkout and get 10% off your first order. Don't just buy any seat. Get a Vivid seat. Squeeze in a couple of more calls for the top of the hour before we talk some baseball with Carl Ravitch. Mel, who calls us next here on ESPN Radio. Hello, Mel.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
Question I have for you. I watch the program. I follow sports. Not one of your announcers have ever said that I heard of that the reason I understand the call. That's perfect. I understand it. Not one of you blamed it on the coach for not winning that game. Why don't you run the ball?
Oh, that's been talked about to death, Mel. I mean, that has been that the play call there obviously was debatable, but the reason the play call only becomes a debate is because they didn't throw the flag for pass interference. They do what they're supposed to do, throw the flag for pass interference, and the Saints run the clock down, kick a field goal, and win the game.
But didn't they run the ball before the
Regardless,
call?
Mel, whether or not you disagree or agree with the play call that was made there has nothing to do with whether or not they got the call right or wrong and the trickle-down effect that now results in a rules change that involves replay, especially in the last 2 minutes of each half in every game going forward. Yes, that's a totally separate debate. It was a debate we've had, believe me, ad infinitum. Opening day is